It is so wonderful to see so many of you here from the four corners of the state, and in particular upstate. For those of you who I have not yet met, I'm Bob Bullock, Deputy Director for Operations for the Nelson A. Rockefeller Institute of Government, organizer of today's program, Facing the Storm, Preparing for Increased Extreme Weather in Upstate New York, a topic important to all of us. On behalf of our partners in this event, the University at Albany's Department of Atmospheric and Environmental Sciences, the Rockefeller College of Public Affairs and Policy, the New York State Emergency Management Association, and the New York State Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Services, we are indeed delighted to welcome you for this important consideration of a problem that will likely affect each of our agencies and organizations, increasingly severe weather. It is our hope that through the information you gain today, you will be better prepared for what occurs in the year and years ahead. We have a full agenda today, so let me limit myself to a few brief administrative remarks before our first speaker. Because of the breadth of the information to be covered, we're not going to have formal breaks, at least not prolonged ones. It will, however, be necessary for us to take about 5, maybe 10 minutes between panels. We encourage you to use this time, approximately 10 minutes, to refresh your beverages or any of the food in the back of the room, or use the restrooms that are located just outside of the main doors, and our staff can help locate those for you if you need assistance. You are also free to move in and out of the room during presentations, but if you do, we ask you to be sensitive to those folks who are seated around you. I'm not going to ask a room full of disaster managers to turn off your phones, but I will ask you to perhaps put them on vibrate during the course of the afternoon's presentations. Finally, if you wish to ask a question during the question and answer periods that will take place at the conclusion of each of our panels, we ask that you stand, identify yourself and your organization, and state your question loudly so that we all might hear, and our moderators are going to go ahead and repeat those questions to the best of our ability, so that we can have those for the video that is being done for our website. It now gives me great pleasure to introduce the director of the Rockefeller Institute and my boss, Dr. Tom Gaze. Tom?
Thank you, Bob. As many of you know, the Rockefeller Institute, which is the Public Policy Research Institute for the State University of New York, is located on State Street. And at one point, we actually intended to have this meeting on State Street, but it would be the popularity of the topic has just sort of overwhelmed us, and so it's wonderful to be able to have it here at the University at Albany. I want to thank the university, especially Jim Diaz and Bob and everybody else, to sort of make this available to the Institute. This is an issue. Disaster preparedness and recovery has been an issue that the Institute has done work on before. Back in 2006 through 2009, the Rockefeller Institute, with support from the Ford Foundation, conducted what we call the Gulf Gov Project. This was a project we worked with, in which we worked with the Public Affairs Research Council of Louisiana to do field research in 3 states, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama, to understand the role of state and local governments, as well as nonprofit organizations in facilitating the recovery. We also, as part of that, looked at the recovery of governance itself. And I think if you're interested, many of those reports, which are up on our website, www.rockins.org, are still there, and I think are still relevant. I mean, more generally, this is a core issue that's going to be coming up, obviously, for many years. It used to be a kind of extraordinary matter to deal with these huge changes and huge recoveries in parts of the country, and they're usually more localized in certain parts of the country. Now we see that it's not only spreading broadly across many parts, but it's also a much more frequent and larger issue So it's now becoming a matter, disaster recovery, disaster preparedness is now becoming a core function of our governmental system. That has many implications. It affects nearly every aspect of domestic policy, and it affects and it actually implicates our very fragmented federal system. One of the big areas that the Institute has worked in for many, many years. Now, I want to thank Bob Bullock, Peter Finn, and Chris Thorncroft to put this project together, and Jim Fawcett as well at the Rockefeller Institute. They've done a lot of work on this, and I appreciate their enormous contributions to this excellent discussion. And now I'd just like to introduce someone who actually needs no introduction from me, President Robert Jones of the University at Albany. He is also, I should say, you can come up, Robert. He is also, I should say, a member of our Board of Overseers, and I'm really happy to have worked with him over the last year. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom, and good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the University at Albany. It is very reassuring to see so many of you here to collaborate on an issue that I know is critically important to all of us that are members of different communities across the state. It is particularly reassuring when you consider the fact that we are experiencing, I think, our first 80-degree day since last year, and to see so many of you that have taken advantage of this opportunity is really gratifying. I think it's fair to say that we have all seen the devastating consequences of extreme weather in upstate New York, and I know we all share the desire to improve our resilience and to better prepare for the future, because as Tom just stated, the state of New York is one state that is predicted to receive a very high frequency of these extreme weather events in the future. So clearly there are no easy solutions, but I think there is great promise from developing effective approaches, and that great promise lies in bringing people like yourselves from a broad array of expertise and disciplines together to talk and discuss and to learn, and that's exactly what we have done here today. Today's presenters include leading policymakers, scientists, and emergency responders. At the University at Albany, we are working hard to do our part by effectively leveraging our expertise and the expertise that we have in this area. Some of you know UAlbany has the largest concentration of weather climate scientists in the state of New York and one of the largest in the nation. Our researchers are tackling critical issues across the globe. They are researching everything from hurricanes to shrinking glaciers and developing sophisticated forecasting models. These are just among a few of the things that they're doing to shed new light on this critical issue. Right here in New York State, our weather and our climate scientists are spearheading the development of New York State's early warning detection system. You're going to be hearing a lot more about this mesonet system that we're developing. This will be the most advanced network of its kind in the country. And thanks to the leadership of Governor Cuomo, we are working very closely with partners within the state of New York State Department of Homeland Security, Emergency Services, and the National Weather Services to implement this sophisticated system. Current weather observation systems are very, very limited. This new system that we're planning and in the process of implementing will add 125 interconnected surface weather stations throughout the state, along with three-dimensional profiling capability. It will provide state and local government officials with access to high-resolution, real-time data and robust predictive models. These data then will enable emergency managers, decision makers to better plan and to mitigate extreme weather events. This advanced early warning weather detection system is a great example. I think it's a primary example of the power of partnership. and tackling challenging issues of our time. Albany is very thankful to NY SUNY 2020 initiative which has allowed us to hire many faculty at this university for the first time in levels that are high for the first time in about 40 years. And we're in the process of hiring additional atmospheric and environmental scientists who will further strengthen our expertise in weather and climate science. And these scientists will be housed in a new state-of-the-art facility, a $165 million emerging technology and entrepreneurship complex that will be located only a few hundred yards away from here. This, in turn, will strengthen what we are already able to accomplish through partnerships that we form to address weather and climate issues. Speaking of good partnerships, I'd like to take this time just to thank our organizers today, the Rockefeller Institute of Government, Albany's Department of Atmospheric and Environmental Sciences, the Rockefeller College, and the New York State Emergency Management Association in cooperation with the New York State Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Services. We have put together a great program, I believe, and I wish you a most productive afternoon. It is now my pleasure to turn the podium over to someone who cares deeply about these issues and will be leading our discussion today, Congressman Paul Tonko. Not quite done yet. Having served on the Science and Space Technology Committee and is now a member of the Energy Commerce Committee, Congressman Tonko knows firsthand the impact that extreme weather has across all sectors of our economy and many facets of our society. In his own district and beyond, the Congressman personally saw the carnage that severe weather has upon real people's lives with Irene, Lee, and Sandy. And he responded with a tireless resolve, advocating for financial assistance that was necessary for our communities to recover and to rebuild. A true champion and a very close friend to the University of Albany, Congressman Tonko is a very strong advocate for the entire Greater Capital Region, and I think the entire state and the nation. It is now my great pleasure to present to you our friend, Congressman Paul Tonko.
Thank you very much, and thank you, President Jones, for your kind introduction and for your leadership here at SUNY Albany. And thank you to Bob Bullock and Tom Geis for putting together the leadership here and all who have been those partners to organize. Many of you have been singled out. Thank you for putting this all together. While there's so many familiar faces in the room, and it's just good to gather with you as we continue to build the synergy that allows us to respond to what are very important factors out there that cannot be denied. And we certainly know that, or I certainly know from firsthand experience, but many of you have been the participants out there to provide the response and responsiveness to the situations in the 20th Congressional District and formerly the 21st Congressional District that I represented. The entire Mohawk Valley and Hudson Valley and Schoharie Valley had been severely impacted in the past, and so it is good to know that there's great attention coming to that region for the purposes of flood protection and response. And so many of the people in the room are those that have brought that added focus to the region, and I thank you for that. You've rolled up your sleeves, you've worked as a team, and you've inspired great progress, and it's just good to see that sort of attention coming forward. You have what was oftentimes referred to as the Schoharie Creek, now oftentimes referred to as the Schoharie River, because way back in 1987, it wiped out a thruway bridge with its forcefulness that was equal to that of Niagara Falls. And then, of course, the Mohawk is the major tributary into that Hudson. The majestic, mighty Hudson has a very historic tributary in the Mohawk. And so all of that, getting the attention that it is receiving right now, is much deserved and certainly very timely because of the impacts of Mother Nature. And I do want to thank everyone again for participating today. And President Jones, thank you again for your leadership and your kind introduction. When the President was first named by the state of New York to come here and take over the mantle of leadership, I got on the phone and called him and was totally pleased that he was deeply interested and committed to research, innovation, technology, and I hear that in your message here this morning, making certain that we have the tools that are state-of-the-art, ready to go to work here and incorporated with the agenda and the curriculum and the resources of SUNY Albany. So thank you for your outstanding leadership, and I see him not only on campus, but in the 20th Congressional District and in Washington, knocking on doors. So keep up the advocacy. It's most welcome. Certainly, I think it's important to state that flooding is not new to this area. But over the past several years, with Tropical Storm Irene and Hurricane Lee and Hurricane Sandy, and intense rainfall events like the one that was experienced in Herkimer County last year, along with western Montgomery County last year, communities across our state have been coping with extraordinary hardship and devastation that is related to the floods. In fact, since 2006, the Mohawk Valley alone has seen tremendous flooding events, 3 major events. And this does not take into account the severe flooding in the Adirondacks and in the Catskills that accompanied Irene and 2 significant flooding events that impacted Binghamton and the southern tier during this same time period. So upstate New York had more than its share of damage from the ravages of storms. And ironically, as I walked in here today, it is an 80-plus degree day, but also a tropical breeze that's out there, and hard to imagine that tomorrow is going to be a return to winter, and that flood watches are out already because of the high levels of our rivers and streams, and the snow melt and the spring conditions so that we experienced this weekend. So we're again preparing for perhaps some added attention. Over the past decade, New Yorkers have experienced numerous floods and flooding in areas that previously had not seen flooding, but for once or twice a generation. Communities like Fort Plain and Wyndham and Middleburg and Keene are now thinking strategically about what they can do to better prepare for severe weather events. In fact, even the nomenclature is somewhat of an interesting pattern, where within the past decade or two, we've experienced many 100 and 500-year storms. So something is definitely challenging out there, and we need to pay attention to data compiled. And they are working with neighboring communities to collaborate and coordinate their efforts to recover and to make their communities more resilient. They are looking to their federal and state governments for assistance and counsel. This is where we come in and where we have much to do. Gatherings like this conference and last month's Mohawk Watershed Symposium hosted at Union College certainly help us as New Yorkers to grapple with this given new reality. These events allow us to come together and share ideas in a meaningful way, and to share our experiences and expertise with one another, to have an effective outcome and provide options to these communities to maximize the benefits of our unique landscapes while also mitigating the hazards that accompany them. These extreme weather events last for a matter of hours or days, while recovery from their destruction takes years. In fact, we're witnessing that as we speak from the damages of 2011. Hurricane Irene, for example, began as a tropical storm on August 20th of 2011, and by the time it completed its path on August 29th, it had wreaked havoc from Puerto Rico to New England. And it claimed some 56 lives and became the 7th most costly hurricane in history. In fact, claimed 2 lives within our proper of a congressional district. The storm lasted 10 days. It lasted no more than 36 hours in any one spot. But now, nearly 3 years after the storm's end, the recovery phase is still ongoing. Not all businesses have recovered fully. Not all farm businesses have been able to move forward as fully as possible. And a number of families are still struggling to rebuild their lives, their homes, and their communities. The costs of this, both in terms of human suffering and finance, are staggering. I fully realize that no one weather event is caused directly by climate change, but clearly there is a new weather pattern, and our recent experience compels us to reevaluate our given situation and respond to Mother Nature's call to action. Obviously, I spend a good deal of my time in Washington these days, and I'm sure you all read the papers and watch the newscasts about the daily activity, or should I say the lack of daily activity, that characterizes the current Congress. It doesn't look any better close up. In fact, it's darn right frustrating. And certainly there is a wide gulf between the actions that I believe we need to take and the actions that are being taken. The administration is doing some positive things, but without Congress as a willing partner, their actions are constrained. You know, I serve on a panel called SEEK, the Sustainable Energy and Environment Coalition, and there are about 56 to 57 of us who are somewhat green-minded in policy format and have come together so as to reach out to our colleagues in the House to advise and encourage them to green up the thinking in policy. We're at the highest number we've ever had. We're the second largest caucus now in the House, and I happen to be one of the co-chairs of SEEK, which was formed in '09 when I first entered Congress. And we try desperately to get as many outsiders to come in and address us on technical and scientific terms. And recently, just recently, last week, we were visited by Connie Hedegaard, who is the first commissioner for the European Union of climate change. And her historic given is that she, at the age of 24, became the youngest person ever elected to the Parliament of Denmark. And when she spoke to our group the other day, she was absolutely amazed that there is not a legislative partnership with the executive branch. And she just rhetorically asked, how do you get this done without legislative reinforcement, without statutorily defining where we're going? And so we need sometimes to hear from outsiders about the dysfunction that has gripped Washington. I can tell you there's a very diverse mentality, a very contrast out there, where many want to cut our way to tomorrow. Many of us, myself included, want to invest our way to a stronger economy. I don't see how we do this with cuts that will deeply damage investment activities that are needed right now to make a difference with our challenges that surround us and haunt us. It will come as no news to all of us that we have a substantial backlog of water infrastructure projects across our great nation. Throughout this country and here in New York State, we have dams and levees that need to be repaired, replaced, removed, or strengthened, depending upon the specific structure we're talking about, of course. We also have drinking water, sewer, and sewage treatment infrastructure that needs work. It is obvious to me that we are underinvesting in a number of areas. We need to invest in our infrastructure. As I travel throughout the 20th Congressional District, I not only see the need, I hear it all the time expressed from all sorts of local officials, appointed members of various agencies in the state of New York, and workers who understand that we don't escape the investment requirement here. And I believe we must address that investment. We are still the world leader in research and innovation in many fields, but we cannot retain that position without serious investments in research and development. I saw it at NYSERDA, which was my last workstation before I went to Washington. The empowerment that comes with research directly equals jobs. And so as a nation sophisticated as ours, as an economy as large as ours, as a world leader as we have been, we cannot have that promising, robust future without a requirement and a demand and a commitment to infrastructure. With respect to infrastructure, we're really living off of the investments made by our parents and our grandparents' generations. It is time for us to follow their example and invest in the next generations. You know, I'm of the vintage where I can now say there were people there for me for a long time. people for us that wanted the best so that we could be competitive in an international economy, so that we could grow the potential of each and every student in school, so that we could have hope that is based on soundness of planning and a vision for constantly stretching and growing beyond what we are and who we are. Well, that should still exist. I'm convinced there's a pioneer spirit in this nation. It is part of our DNA, and we require our leaders to respond in equal fashion and not dumb down America, but invest in America and go forward with a reality that addresses the situations that exist out there. Infrastructure work, for instance, has been deferred for some time. The problems with infrastructure don't correct themselves or become less expensive to repair or replace if we choose to wait. In the case of drinking water infrastructure alone, EPA has documented over the past 17 years the increase in the backlog of infrastructure investment. And this is vital infrastructure that is vulnerable to extreme weather events. Every 4 years, the agency assesses infrastructure needs for its states and its territories across this country and publishes those given results. The first report in 1997 estimated an infrastructure investment of some $138 billion that was needed over a 20-year period to maintain what we all take for granted: access to clean, access to safe drinking water. Well, we haven't done very well. The latest report, released in April of last year, indicated that the backlog had grown. EPA now estimates that we need $384 billion over the next 15 to 20 years to maintain these vital services. So that has been a major leap upward in the demand on our system, our government, and our resources to get it done. During my tenure on the Committee on Science, Space, and Technology, during my first 2 terms in Congress, I spent considerable time on the oversight of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's satellite procurement programs. And of course, you are all well aware of the importance of weather satellites for accurate forecasting, on which we depend greatly. There have been missteps with the procurement program of the next generation weather satellites over the past decade. But some of the problems are related to unpredictable funding streams, overly optimistic assessments of the development of new sensor technologies, and unrealistic expectation of these systems' costs. Ultimately, we are likely to be spending more that we needed to because we were unwilling to allocate a sufficient budget and realistic timeline for development from the very start. The other glaring example of this short-term thinking is our stream gauge and river monitoring network. This vital monitoring network provides essential weather forecasting information, especially during flooding events. Yet we struggle to maintain basic funding for it. You know, many of the comeback scenarios along the banks of our rivers, communities, the necklace of communities that were formerly mill towns, that were epicenters of invention and innovation, require in many cases comeback scenarios. The comeback axis happens to be the association with not only our natural resources of water, our rivers and streams, but historic resources that became the ink that wrote our history, our early history. So there are ways for us to create this profound sense of place, all while we go forward advantaging our location along historic waterways to make it all happen. And we cannot be denied that opportunity simply because we haven't managed the flow of those waters well enough, especially when there's cutting-edge opportunity at our fingertips that we're denying because of a lack of investment. Certainly, as you in the business of studying and monitoring and predicting climate and weather well know, we must have these modern tools to deliver better information and more hope for these communities that are putting together plans, a vision of where they want to be that includes an affiliation with the waterways. We cannot maintain our edge as a nation in the 21st century by relying on poorly maintained infrastructure that dates back to the 19th and 20th centuries. States have been making investments, but they cannot do everything. And again, I applaud the many in this room that have been part of that infusion of resources and planning activity and focus for the region that I represent as it relates to flooding and as it relates to best use, prime use of our waterways. Those states have been making investments, and as I said, cannot do everything. But the federal government should be providing resources to our states and our local governments to help them modernize their vital infrastructure requirements. Instead, at the federal level, we continue to treat all spending as it's wasteful. We talk about government being too big, government being the enemy. I ask my colleagues, have you quantified this? Let me see the calculus by which you've arrived at your decisions here as to the tone that you've established. Funds spent on infrastructure, research and development and deployment of modern technologies generates far more for our economy and our citizens than cuts that leave us without the basic services that define a modern society. We can quantify these investments, these down payments, as job growth opportunities of cutting-edge variety of some types that are not yet on the radar screen, where we're given a chance to speak to the undeniably number one issue that challenges all of us in government these days, job creation and growth of the economy. It happens when we invest in us. It happens when we invest in basic core needs like water systems and water treatment and sewage systems and the infrastructure that will keep us a functioning bit of commerce in the U.S. I am certainly involved with communities and visiting businesses every week. I do not hear requests for less accurate weather forecasting. I don't hear requests for dirtier water or less clean air. I don't hear requests for less education for children or for badly maintained roads or requests for unsafe dams and bridges. I have seen the pain that came through the consequences of turning our back to progress. These are basic ingredients for a modern society and for a vital economy. These are things that I would argue we all need. We prosper when we invest in who we are. And you know, a budget is not only where we are at the given moment, but where we want to go, who we want to be. And if we hold back the next generations unborn, what sort of legacy will we leave? We seem to be living off the fat of the land that generations before us invested in so that we could have it all. How dare we drain the well dry and then pass it on to the next generation? You know, this Congress is likely to get one important infrastructure bill done this year. Wow, what progress. But the Water Resource Development Authorization, or WRDA, which passed the House and Senate earlier this year, is still being debated in the House-Senate conference. I voted for the House bill, H.R. 3080. Water infrastructure for maintenance of coastal and inland waterways, flood protection, and maintenance of ports is indeed essential to maintain a dynamic, healthy, and robust economy. But the authorized funding in the bill and the misplaced focus on the National Environmental Policy Act are making it tougher to push this bill over the finish line than it should be. During the bill's consideration, Major General Walsh of the Corps informed the Transportation Committee that when Congress inefficiently provides funding to the Corps, projects take longer to complete and therefore will cost more. When the Corps is given the necessary resources to complete a project, it generally comes in on time and most often under budget. The resources we are providing through annual appropriations are far short of what is required to ensure that projects come in on time and under budget. The estimated cost for Corps projects currently under construction is some $20 billion. Recent annual appropriations are in the neighborhood of $1 to $2 billion. That's as good as it can get, according to the consensus we can build with some very far-right thinking. We may hear some good news on this front soon. I believe the conferees are getting closer to an agreement, then at least we'll have a down payment and perhaps inspiration to go further. And I hope we will be voting on this legislation and sending it to the President's desk for his signature this spring. Hopefully the final bill will provide a more robust level of funding than the House offered, although I expect it will still fall short of what we truly should be investing. We need to do some things differently. That is a given. Change requires it. Dynamics of the given moment demand it. But I can see no scenario where doing more with less is going to address a situation where need is growing and the backlog is this large. Mother Nature doesn't know for sound bites. She doesn't know for political divides. She doesn't know for denial to the future of this nation. Certainly, she is a powerful force. And certainly, there may be ways to do things differently, ways that are more cost-effective and sustainable. But we cannot make any real progress without securing new financial resources. However, to apply these resources effectively and make communities along our waterways safer, we do need a better understanding of the risks we are facing. That is where better forecasting and understanding of medium to long-term climate trends comes in. I also believe that we must do a better job of working with the landscape to use the power of natural systems to do some of our flood control, some of our water filtration and water storage, and certainly some of our storm water management. We are blessed to live in a beautiful region of the country, and the Hudson and Mohawk rivers are great treasures that provide us with many, many benefits. With creative, strategic design, infrastructure investments, and increased support for research and development, we can meet the challenges of severe weather. The great work that many of you do in climate and weather research and in forecasting has saved many lives during the severe storms and helped to avoid even higher costs by affording individuals and businesses time to prepare for severe weather events. But we do need to do more. I will continue to advocate for the resources we need to generate the knowledge that will offer communities the information they need to ensure their safety and their prosperity as we enter this new climate pattern. Although our economy has not yet fully recovered from the downturn that began in 2007, we are still a wealthy nation. We can and must provide the resources to maintain our infrastructure, our communities, and the services required by a modern society. I would opine here that we need to do it in a way that's much more balanced. We cannot let off any of the strata, income strata, from their fair share of responsibility. And we cannot saddle the middle-income community with the costs of recovery alone. We have taken it on the chin for far too long. It's time to advance revenue reform along with investment in climate control. We are going to pay for severe storms one way or the other. And either we make positive upfront investments to reduce our vulnerability to severe weather and flooding, or we can pay to clean up in the aftermath of these tragic events, pay dearly in dollars, and most certainly more dearly in human life. I'm not discouraged by the current situation in Washington. It is dysfunctional, but I will say I am challenged. I'm challenged to be a countervoice to some of this thinking that is most crippling of the process and most denying of our hope. I am anxious to work with you and with others to meet these challenges. We can do this together. We must do this together. With the intellect, with the energy, with the drive in this room, the professionalism that you exert with each and every exercise, I am confident we can. And you deserve our respect from Washington of your talents and your abilities and the need for our communities. I hope you will take up this challenge with me so we can offer the communities in our region and in other areas the opportunity to live more sustainably and more safely. My hope is that everyone who lives and works here will be able to view the magnificent rivers in our region as assets and not risks. I thank you again for inviting me to speak with you here today, and thank you for the vital work you do every day, where you roll up your sleeves, go to work, and make great things happen. You need to be thanked over and over again. Perhaps too trite a message, but I do thank you. And let's go forward and provide hope to the many communities that are counting on us to get it done with resources and the work that is being done through your talent. Thank you so much, everybody. Enjoy your panels. Thank you, Bob.